Right. Can you do me a favour? Just keep an eye on that periodically. It should look like that, but with me in front of the screen. If it doesn't, then you can change it.
I mean, you are now on the screen.
It's good. Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. You've got a couple more. Quick show of hands. Who is this? Who is at LAMchester for the first time today? Okay. Cool. Wow. Okay. So this is a little bit of a review of the last 3 years, and a little bit of a explanation as to why we're taking a break and what we're going to come back with in due course. LAMchester has been running now literally for 3 years, although obviously the pandemic in the middle was a little bit disruptive, and we lost about 8 or 9 months worth of events, but came back as soon as we could. What a lot of people don't realise is the story behind LAMchester and why it started, and that actually dates back about 7 years. And someone who's no longer with us, someone called Holly the Doggy, who was a very outspoken individual, but sometimes those people are necessary to kind of advance our communities. And one of the conversations we had on a regular basis was, why won't you bring Lam up to Manchester? And at the time, the answer was because I physically can't do it, because I was in a car crash in '98. One of the previous visits to Manchester in 2006, I fell 30 foot and smacked the same leg that I did in a car crash. And I literally couldn't. I could do Lam in London and then spend 3 days in bed trying to recover. So the concept of doing something up the other end of the country was just absolutely impossible until I foolishly said to someone, when you get married, I'll provide the dungeon furniture for your party. On one condition: pick any other weekend of the month apart from the first weekend of the month, because I'm kind of going to be a little bit busy down in London on Sunday. So she got married at the 3rd or 4th of January.
I actually got married on the 4th of January, but I had that party was the 5th.
And of course, Lam's on the 6th. So I came up on Friday, delivered a van full of dungeon furniture, set up the party, debriefed the party at about 2 o'clock on Sunday morning, went back to the hotel, decided it wasn't worth sleeping in Manchester, so I drove all the way back to London, got about an hour's sleep in my own bed, and then went out and did Lam for the day. And shockingly enough, I wasn't actually completely crippled and in bed for the next few days. So at that stage, I decided we could probably get away with doing Lam up in Manchester. So we spoke to our hosts down in London, who were Revolution, and initially we looked at one of their other venues, and it was just unfortunately too small for us. And at the time, the manager of the in-state lock was a half reasonable human being, so we moved into there as their biggest one in Manchester. Then unfortunately, when lockdown happened, they changed manager, and the new manager wasn't the nicest of people and didn't seem to appreciate us Kingsters. So on the launch or the reboot of LAMchester was the first day that they actually opened in-state lock Revolution. And I went round the day before and the guy said, look, I'm not interested, I've got 450 people booked in for bottomless Prosecco brunch tomorrow. I'm like, okay, that'd be interesting. And we'd sold 300 tickets to this. Now we had 230 people turn up on Sunday, which at the end of COVID, that was quite an impressive number. And they had 30 of their bookings. So it was literally this, oops, I've offended the kinky guy, and he works at our head office in London on our flagship location. And there was really no coming back, because once you're kind of negative towards kink, I want to see a change in management before I go back to the venue, because I really don't want to spend my time trying to educate them. So that's why we ended up in here. The problem is this is not really large enough for us to do a full LAM style event, and for a multitude of reasons, the primary one being one of my vanilla clients has just turned around and said, hey, we love what you do, but we want 400% more of it. Now the problem is it's a real niche job I do, and it's going to take about 4 months to train enough people to deliver that initial amount of work. So my time has just suddenly become so valuable that I can't give up the Friday and the Monday required to come up here because I've got clients screening for work so desperately. So that was the reason we had to take a break at this particular time. We are planning on coming back later in the year. I don't know exactly when. I don't know exactly where either, because I've got a couple of options in Manchester, and equally something that we thought this was going to be Northern Land and Manchester would be its home, but we actually found out through trips to Liverpool. Does anyone know about our two didn't quite manage to make trips to Hull?
Shopping centre.
So we were offered a venue in Hull, which happened to be the event space in the bottom of Prince's Quay Shopping Centre, which we thought, that's great. Great use of the space, it's a nightclub, it's a bar. Unfortunately, the whole Daily Mail took great exception and declared that it was the most abhorrent thing that they'd ever heard of, and we literally had to go toe to toe with the scroty cretins of Hull, because as far as they were concerned, how dare you have kinky shopping in a shopping centre? That belongs somewhere much more appropriate. And I'm like, okay, shopping centre, you're not seeing this one? And we're not doing it, in the vacant Primark unit with the big glass windows. We're actually, going to a place where all the windows are blacked out, it's a bar, it's a nightclub, and that's where we work. So that gave us the idea that actually, maybe moving things around a little bit would be a good idea. So I'm not saying that we will be 100% Manchester when we come back. We might actually again move around between 3 or 4 cities. We might not be going back to Hull because I think the Hull Daily Mail and their readership will have a community fit again.
Serious man and only is the.
Yes. Oh.
Goes further up from the Hull bar.
I was offered one of the towers of the
Time Bridge.
Time Bridge. Yeah.
Yes, do it.
One slight problem. Parking. How are we going to load the stalls in if we've got to load them in via the bridge? But I'm not ruling it out. There's some really good bondage space in there from what I've seen.
Oh, yes.
But at the same time, I really want to make sure that space is fully functional before we agree to that.
It's used to be in land revenue, so I don't know what happens. I'm going back to my house to you. In land revenue was there.
We're in the town.
Yeah,
In the
as well.
bridge.
Yeah, that was there. It's work experience there, isn't it?
Oh,
Just put that out.
okay. Certainly the virtual tour I've seen, I mean, there's no officing bit, it's all quite.
I'm old and old back.
So yes, we possibly will take things back on tour when we come back. I haven't decided yet, primarily because my life is coping with how the hell am I going to deliver 400% more work for a client of mine in London at the moment, which is a challenge. So that kind of tells you.
Can I leave it at this point and say that LAM is not a profit-making organisation. It's certainly not for David. Everything all the money we make goes to charities, goes back into causes. This is not a business.
Or it is a limited company, but when we formed the limited company, the concept of having a not-for-profit company didn't exist. So all of those vehicles that have come into play since were totally appropriate, but actually when we started in 2005, I sat there and went, I want to get to a position where I can force the Chancellor of the Exchequer to live off his moral earnings. And that's literally what we did, because the whole idea was If we were legitimate and we were a real company and we've got a company number and we pay tax and all the rest of it, if they came after us, my flip was going to be, hey guys, I'm coming after you for living off of moral earnings. Because if what we're doing is so wrong, you've committed the offence by accepting our monies. Irritatingly enough, they didn't come after us. They accepted the tax that we pay, they accept our accounts, and it is rolled forward. Now, I'm not saying that I won't change it and put it into a trust or something like that at some stage, because we pay the government tax, and actually, if we generated this as a trust, we wouldn't have to pay tax, and we could give more of the money that we generate back into the community. And in fact, the sum of money that we've generated currently stands at £30,000. Now, what have we funded? Well, everything from people who've lost their jobs because they were kinky that needed money to go on a retraining course. We've done that numerous times. We've helped new clubs get started. We've helped venues in times of trouble. There were a few that were going to close their doors at various stages, and we kind of went, look, you need to make those improvements, so there have £3,000, get on with doing it, and that way the local community still has a venue, etc. A couple of things we've done have been a little bit amusing over the years. We've helped fundraise for someone's wheelchair.
You went there.
Only for that person to then accuse us of human trafficking them 5 years later. Okay? Which was really quite impressive. But you know what? Not going to stop me doing things to support our community, because I now have a new definition for my pre-mortem. When someone says to me, what could go wrong with this scene? I now go, 5 years later you can get a knock on your door with an allegation of human trafficking. Okay? I know it's an extreme situation, but actually it does help us to think outside of the box. Okay? It's not just, hey, we might have a relationship breakdown and no longer like each other. Oh my God, 14 new formed officers turning up with a search warrant at 7:30 on a Thursday morning. That's a bit of a spelling salt wake up, I can assure you. But funnily enough, we got 3.5 months into that, and they turned around and went, yeah, we've kind of realised that this is a false allegation. And I'm going, I told you that 3.5 months ago. Really, seriously, at the end of the day, if I'm going to kidnap people and human traffic them, large lesbians in wheelchairs, not my target demographic. In fact, it's incredibly niche as a commercial opportunity. And to be perfectly frank, does anyone know the sum of money that a human being trades for on the dark, horrible side of society? This is going to really shock most of you. £500. Yeah, that is the price of a person if they're working in a nail bar or vegetable picking for a farm, etc. I was shocked at how little it is. I thought, a couple of grand would be at least the minimum. No, it's a low price because apparently it costs an awful lot to keep in secret. So they don't actually have the value that people assume. There we go. So yes, that was one of the lessons that I certainly learned. One of the key things is things like this behind us. If they're on Consent in Kink workshop. If you've not heard of it before, please look it up. There are now about 3 or 4 versions that we've recorded and made available on the archive. And the whole idea is that as our world has expanded, as things that people are interested in has expanded, we need to give people the tools to say, oh my God, I'm really into this. Are you? And if you go, no, that's not me in the slightest, okay? It's giving people the ability to clearly communicate that before they start playing, before they investigate too far. Because at the end of the day, we're a very diverse community of people, and you don't have to be into everything. Okay? In fact, I would be a little bit suspicious of a person who says, I need to everything and I have no limits, because they probably just haven't met the right person yet who's going to say, no limits, you tell me. Ooh, can I have the little finger off the left hand and the thumb off the right? Now, sooner or later, they're going to tell you that they've got limits. In fact, it's going to be very, very quick. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that we're all after collecting fingers and body parts, and I've got a big jar of formaldehyde at home containing all of these. But there are people out there that are into some very extreme things. Did anyone see the guys that got busted in London a couple of months ago for having castration parties? And it wasn't the first party that they got caught at. Okay, so these have been going on for some time. Well, I believe as a participant you can only technically really attend once, unless there's some kind of salami slicer involved. And then you might attend quite a few times, but to be perfectly honest, it's going to get messier and messier. And really, we want to encourage people to be able to say, hey, this is what I'm into, and for you to equally feel comfortable to say, oh my God, no, that's not what I'm into at all. But we might have some overlap here, but there we go. So that's the basis of things like clear on consent and keep. We have the scene counsellor in the room sitting over here. You may have seen her in HMP earlier. That's again something which is very much was key to LAMchester. We do that down in London, and we thought actually the benefit that it brings to the community is important to integrate up north. Debs came up for a lot of the early ones, but we decided quite quickly that it's quite a strain on her time and resources, and she suggested Poppy as a suitable local version. And I think actually, if you've never had the joy of watching them both do HMP together, it's really cool because it sets a very different dynamic. Okay? A lot of the common advice but coming from slightly different perspectives.
Debs is funny in the movies, like
That's not what I'm saying. If
Deb swears.
I was going to say anything, Deb swears more than that. Okay? Which I don't have a problem with, because let's face it, there are plenty of problems in this world, as there are everywhere. So, as and when we're going to restart, I can't give you an exact date at the moment, and partly because one of the venues I'm looking at is in the middle of a refurb at the moment, and I can't even imagine what the event is going to look like until I've actually seen what they've done to the building. Because they may decide, oh, actually, we want lots of little private pods and booths around the outside of the room, and therefore it's not going to be of use. So you have to bear with us when we get that together. Equally, we're taking a little bit of a break because not everyone has particularly appreciated what we do and why we do it. So, of recent months, I've heard an awful lot of, oh, well, they're horrible, those people, they restrict their traders to only trade at their events. Now, this person actually stood there and said that with one of my traders standing behind them, and didn't see the logic of, if we're that restrictive, why is this person here at this event today? So, we're going to give a couple of months for the mood to calm down. And if they carry on going, then they're going to get a little bit of direct communication with me. And it'll be, hey guys, sorry about this, we're in a slightly different world to you. We are a legitimate company. And the company actually has rights to be protected as well. And you as a non-entity individual can't go making those statements without being called in on. So we need to do a little bit of clean-up for a few issues, because what we want is for events that are fun for people to attend. We want you to come along and learn and not kind of go away and 6 weeks later someone going, oh, they're horrible people actually. Did you not hear that master Corbett once got investigated for human trafficking? Yeah, I have. I've opened about it. And I've written all about it on the FetLife. If you want to look at the details, it's truly fucking shocking. Because the Met specialist human trafficking team not understand kink in the slightest. And me giving them a 5.5-hour education on a Thursday afternoon doesn't seem to have improved the matter much.
You should have the offensive weapons.
The best one, or the first question out of their mouths, just priceless. Have you ever owned a slave? Yes. What happened to her? She died. Oh, you must tell us. We met down in London, struck up a great relationship, great connection. She's married to this guy in Birmingham. Our relationship split up on the run. But we kind of stayed together as friends, as playmates, and these police were sitting there going, absolutely no clue whatsoever. Okay. And funnily enough, when I wrote to the IOPC and said, I think the Met Specialist Slave Trafficking Team might, need a little bit of an orientation and an education and understanding consensual kink. And they wrote back and said, no, we don't. So I'm like, okay. I'm going to defer that one to the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. Sent it to them in February and they still haven't acknowledged that they need to look into the case. Because they've come back and said, yeah, we've got it on file, we've looked at it, it's a little bit too complex at the moment and we need to decide who's going to take this one on. And they haven't bothered to get back to me with that one. So Sadiq Khan and I, in my 2-month period, I'm going to have a little chat with him and see if we can't straighten this out a little bit. And I think at the moment, since it's Pride Month, it's probably the letter I'm writing on Tuesday. Exactly. And I'll wait till he's at one of the Pride events in the papers a day or two before and say, your appearance at the Pride event the other day prompted me to think about contacting you about this. So that's kind of where we're at. Sorry we don't have any more details. Please make sure you're on our mail list, okay? Because that's where you'll hear about it first. Does anyone have any questions?
If you find yourself down in London, first Sunday of the month, drop in Tears.
Yeah.
It's like this, but 10 times bigger.
Well, about 3 times the size. Huge, massive venue. And equally, we do outdoor events. So 9th of July, we're in Bedfordshire with an outdoor market and barbecue. And then the 14th of July, we're in Kent. August, sorry. Yeah. If anyone has ever thought, oh my God, I'd love to go to a place that's 17 acres with woodland and open fields, and I can run around and be as kinky as I want, that's the day to come join us, because it is a 17-acre site. It's really incredibly remote, and it's got woods and outdoor spaces. We'll probably have pony races. We're talking about doing a human Pokemon hunt there for the day as well. It just gives us the chance to do stuff which is completely mad, not full of wool. And then the final thing that's worth mentioning is in November, we take over a hotel for the weekend. And if you imagine a kind of kinky 40 towers, that's what we've created. So we've got 18 workshops on Saturday and Sunday. 4 hot tubs should be on site. There will be a dungeon to play in. And basically it's like getting away for the weekend, but rather than worrying, oh my God, can I go down to the bar in my leather and latex? You need to be in leather and latex to get down to the bar. Okay? So it's a really mad, fully immersive event. Tickets for that one are £120 for a couple if you're staying on site, and then the cost of the accommodation after that. If you're looking at developing your skills, it's definitely one of the places that you want to look at, particularly if you want to do anything with sharks or needles. Okay. Our educational element around sharks and needles has fallen by the wayside because, strangely enough, no one will allow us to stick holes in people in a licensed venue, and that's why we've decided to have a big focus session on sharks and needles at the retreat, but we're also going to look at recording it using my new camera technique, so we'll be able to have the speaker in one, and then a picture-in-picture running with the close-up details of exactly what they're doing. And you're not aware, I have seen this one, you're not aware of anyone who's done that level? Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to be groundbreaking stuff. It's probably going to take 6 or 8 weeks to edit all of the footage to put it into a final version. So if you want to see it soon, you need to take the weekend, or hope that someone volunteers to help me do video editing. It's one of the tasks I absolutely hate. Don't mind setting up and recording it, but actually when it comes to sitting there and getting frame by frame and splicing it, not my skills. Okay. Any other questions? No? Just also like to thank you all for coming and participating. Because actually it's by people engaging in doing stuff, I'll be able to then go on and fund the projects that we've been involved in. Okay? Because at the end of the day, certainly when we started, you couldn't exactly go to a charitable trust or government and say, hey, we're kinky, we'd like to have a handout to start this new enterprise. Yeah, there was no one was prepared to help, and that's why we put that fund in place. And equally, if you know of anyone who runs into problems because of kink, please encourage them to get in touch with us. Okay? Because there are all manner of things that we've put in place over the years to help. After I got raided, I decided that living for 48 hours without a phone and a laptop really wasn't acceptable while I was under that much stress. So we now have banks of laptops and smartphones, so that if anyone does get raided, we can just dispatch one to you immediately. Because when they come in, they will take everything out of your house, even the old non-smartphones that you haven't used in years and years. No, they're going for absolutely everything, all of your IT equipment. And at the end of the day, if you know that you're not guilty of the crime that they're accusing you of, it's a very isolating position to put anyone in. And that's why we kind of went, yeah, no, we're not having anyone else go through that. And now, if you're an iPhone fan, we have relatively recent iPhones. If you must have an Android, we've got a couple of those. I think we've even got a Windows phone, just in case anyone's actually into Windows phones nowadays. And equally, you don't have to be a regular of LAM, you just have to be kinky. Okay? So if it's someone who you chat to on the internet and they're based up in Scotland and never come to our events, but they've recently run into problems, encourage them to get in touch because there's no one else doing it on a national basis, so we can adopt it that way. Okay. Outside of that, please, if you've got any questions, ask us as the day goes on. Go out and enjoy the stalls. If you do buy anything, please remember, when you go home, take some pictures of it, post it up on your FetLife or Facebook, and you might actually win some cash to come back and shop with us the next time you do it.
Make sure you tag the stall and LAMchester or we won't know.
Yes. If you just put it up randomly and don't tag us in it, I'm never going to find it. But if you tag us, we will find it with a lovely picture, possibly even leave a comment, and as I said, your name will go into the draw to win some cash. Any questions? No.
actually. It's sharing on Facebook. It's been. I realise that it's. I realise a lot of people will. There's a lot of people like to keep fetish secrets and it's been. I think it was lovely, but it's reading that and I'm tempted to share, but I can't really do that on Facebook.
Exactly. So share it on your FetLife, or share it on your kinky Instagram, or your kinky Twitter, or wherever is appropriate. Not everyone can be as open with their family as I am. And as a result, I totally get it. And I have two Facebooks. I have a David Lamb Facebook where I do all of my kinky stuff, and I log into that every couple of hours. And I have a completely vanilla Facebook that I don't think I've logged into this year. It's one of those. So share where you're comfortable with, and hopefully with time, we will get to the stage where everyone can be, yeah, I can share this wherever I want, because my family realise how wrong it is to claim, oh, that's unacceptable for you to be into that kind of thing. At the end of the day, genetics, you've probably got it from somewhere, and there'll be a relative in the distant past who's like, you're doing exactly what I wanted to do when I was your age. That didn't happen. There was no internet, etc. Any more comments or questions? Cool. Have an awesome time, and if we can do anything to help you, please let us know. And if you're around for the after party, the first thing I'm doing in here is going to be a double suspension, which is really quite unusual to watch. So if you're into rope, hang fire here for about 7 o'clock, and we'll entertain you.